Today, we are digging into a tool that is so simple it's actually easy to overlook, but it was so powerful that it helped build entire civilizations. We are, of course, talking about the ard, a primitive plow that literally just scratched the surface of the earth, and in doing so, changed the course of human history.
But before we get to the invention, let's just start with a really fundamental challenge. I want you to imagine you're an early farmer. You've got a family to feed, a plot of land, and that land is tough, it's packed down, it's unyielding. How in the world do you get it ready for planting with only the most basic of tools? I mean, it's an exhausting, nearly impossible task.
And this right here gets us to the core problem our ancestors were up against, the farmer's dilemma. See, before plows, preparing the soil was just brutally slow, hard work, all done with things like digging sticks and simple hoes.
And this is where things get really interesting because you have this massive tension building. On one side, you've got the hand tools, which are incredibly labor-intensive and can only prepare a tiny area of land. But on the other side, you have a growing population that needs more food, more reliable harvests. The old way of doing things just couldn't keep up. Something had to give.
Well, the solution, when it came, was this simple but totally revolutionary invention. A tool that didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be better than a stick. And that tool was the ard.
So what exactly is an ard? Well, think of it as a primitive plow, but the key word here is scratches. Unlike the big, heavy plows that came later, the ard doesn't dig deep and flip the soil over. Nope, it just cuts a shallow little groove, a furrow, into the ground. It seems so basic, but that one little function was an absolute game changer.
And this just illustrates the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got the ard. Its whole job is to scratch a shallow line, a perfect little trench to drop seeds into. The heavy plow on the right, which came much, much later, was a completely different beast. It was designed to dig deep and turn over heavy, dense soils in places like Northern Europe. The ard, though, was that essential first step up the technological ladder.
The whole process was just beautifully simple. You'd place the pointed tip on the ground, and then you'd drag it forward, either with your own strength or later with an animal, and it would cut this neat little furrow. Then you could just walk along, dropping seeds right into that freshly opened line. It organized the whole planting process and made it so much faster.
So where did this brilliant idea even come from? Well, it wasn't some stroke of genius that came out of nowhere. The ard was actually a direct evolution of the digging stick. People essentially took a tool they already knew how to use and just upgraded it for a bigger job. They figured out how to pull it, which meant they could cover way more ground than one person just poking holes in the earth.
But, technology almost never just appears fully formed. The ard itself went through this long, slow process of improvement. Generation after generation of farmers tweaked the design, making it just a little bit better.
And this timeline of plowing in China really shows that evolution in action. We start way back in the Neolithic era with simple tools made of wood and stone. Then, fast forward to the Warring States period, and we start to see the first small plows made of iron, which made them a lot more durable. And finally, by the 1st century BCE, we see the real power-up, hooking them up to cattle. That massively increased efficiency. Each step was just a logical fix for a practical problem.
And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It really highlights a crucial point about how innovation works. Big inventions aren't just born, they're made, piece by piece, over a long time. The story of the ard isn't about one single brilliant inventor. It's about countless, nameless farmers who just kept making small improvements to solve the problems right in front of them.
Okay, so we have a better tool, a simple furrow. Why does that matter so much? Because the impact of that simple scratch, well, it rippled out from the fields and ended up transforming society itself.
And right here, you can see the chain reaction it set off. Suddenly, one farmer could prepare way more land with less work. More land under cultivation meant more reliable harvests, right? A steady food source meant populations could grow larger, and those permanent villages could finally scale up and become the complex states and civilizations we study in history books. And it all started with that simple scratch.
But this wasn't some magic bullet that worked the same everywhere. Farmers were smart. They adapted the tool to their local environment. Up in the dry north of China, where they grew millet, the furrowing technique was key. But down in the wet south, with all the rice paddies, they developed different tools and methods for managing the water and the soil. The ard was just one piece of a bigger, adaptable agricultural toolkit.
Which brings us to our final thought here, and a chance to reflect on what primitive technology really means. It's so easy for us, in our high-tech world, to look back at something like the ard and just dismiss it. But man, that would be a huge mistake.
And this Right here, this is the key takeaway. Primitive does not mean useless or ineffective. It just means early. It means first. The ard was the perfect tool for its time because it solved the most important problem of its day.
At the end of the day, the genius of the ard was its practicality. It just worked. It helped people feed their families using the wood, stone, and muscle they actually had available. In a world where your survival was a day-to-day struggle, creating a tool that made life just a little more secure, that wasn't just an innovation, it was a monumental human achievement. And that leaves us with one final thought. The ard was a simple scratch that completely redefined the world. It really makes you wonder, what are the simple, maybe even primitive-seeming innovations that are happening right now that might be laying the groundwork for our own future? What small scratches today will end up becoming the bedrock of tomorrow's civilizations?